Welcome to Midnight Whispers, where the night doesn't whisper, it warns. As you lie in the safety of your bed, imagine footsteps in the forest, eyes watching from behind the trees, and truths too terrifying to ignore. These aren't just stories, they're echoes from the shadows, real accounts whispered under breath by those who survived. So close your eyes, but don't fall asleep too fast. The darkness remembers.
Imagine you're a sheriff, hardened by years of patrolling vast, isolated lands. You think you've seen it all, until the greatest threat you face isn't some unknown monster, but someone who once wore the very same badge, or a prominent figure in your quiet town. How would you react when the protector becomes the predator? This is the chilling reality faced by the law enforcement officers we're about to meet, individuals who had to confront the deepest forms of betrayal, not from external forces, but from within their own trusted circles. Their stories peel back the veneer of safety in rural America, revealing how easily darkness can hide in plain sight, and how fragile trust can truly be. Let's start with Sheriff Robert Harland, a man whose 23 years with the Creston County Sheriff's Department in rural Montana had, he thought, prepared him for anything. Grisly attacks, domestic disputes, the usual grim realities of isolated wilderness. But nothing, absolutely nothing, could have prepared him for the night of February 2018. It was a blizzard, the kind that swallows roads and makes the world disappear. Just after midnight, a call came in reporting headlights veering off Route 12 near the abandoned Blackwood property, 40 miles from town. With temperatures plummeting to -15, Harland knew he couldn't wait. He decided to respond himself. The Blackwood property was a desolate place, a crumbling farmhouse and outbuildings used by local teens for parties. But tonight, he doubted anyone was there by choice. As his headlights cut through the swirling snow, they caught fresh tire tracks leading toward the house. The driver's door of a silver sedan hung open, snow already piling on the seats. No driver. Harland radioed dispatch, grabbing his flashlight and weapon. The wind was a physical assault as he followed a single set of uneven footprints toward the dark farmhouse. A faint light flickered on the second floor. The front door was ajar. "Sheriff's Department," he called, pushing the door open. "Anyone in here? I'm here to help." Silence. The air inside was freezing, thick with the smell of decay and something else, something metallic and organic. Blood. His flashlight swept across dusty floors, revealing not just the fresh tracks he'd followed, but multiple sets, crisscrossing the entryway. Some old, some fresh. Nothing about this made sense. This property was miles from anywhere, practically inaccessible. "Hello, Sheriff's Department," he called again, louder. The house creaked, but offered no other sound. As he moved carefully, his radio crackled to life. "Sheriff, dispatch here. That vehicle is registered to a Daniel Morrow from Billings. Reported missing 3 weeks ago by his wife." 3 weeks. But the tracks outside were no more than an hour old. Harland's blood ran cold. He requested backup, knowing it would be at least 40 minutes in this weather. He shouldn't proceed alone, but the thought of an injured person freezing to death upstairs overrode protocol. He began to climb, each creak of the old wood a jolt to his nerves. The flickering light came from the last room on the right. The metallic smell grew stronger. He pushed the door open with his foot, gun raised. The room was empty, save for a wooden chair in the center, facing away from the door. Around it, dozens of candles formed a perfect circle. On the chair sat a police scanner, the same model used by his own department, quietly broadcasting patrol updates. And then he saw them. Hundreds of photographs covering nearly every inch of the walls. Photos of *him star. Robert Harland on patrol. Robert Harland at the grocery store. Robert Harland in his yard. Robert Harland sleeping through his bedroom window. Interspersed were photos of other people, some he recognized as local residents, others unfamiliar. Many had their faces circled in red. Several were from missing person reports that had crossed his desk over the past year. In the center of one wall hung a county map with locations marked in what looked disturbingly like dried blood. The Blackwood property was circled multiple times. Before Harland could process the horrifying tableau, a floorboard creaked in the hallway behind him. He spun around, but it was too late. Something heavy struck his arm, sending his gun skittering across the floor. Pain exploded through his shoulder as he stumbled backward. A figure stood in the doorway, face obscured by shadow. "Been waiting for you, Sheriff," a voice said, familiar, yet unplaceable. "Thought the weather might keep you away, but you're predictable. Always responding personally to calls near your precious hunting cabin." How did this person know about his cabin? Few people did. The figure stepped into the candlelight, revealing a face Harland hadn't seen in years. Carter Walsh, a former deputy he'd fired for excessive force. "Walsh, what the hell is this?" Harland demanded. "This," Walsh gestured to the photos, "is what happens when you take everything from someone. I've been documenting your life while planning how to end it." The former deputy held a hunting knife. "Those missing people, they all wronged me in some small way. But you destroyed my life." What followed was a desperate struggle, a 58-year-old sheriff against a younger, rage-fueled opponent. Walsh slashed wildly, catching Harland across the chest. But the sheriff, despite his injured arm, managed to grab a heavy candlestick, swinging it hard against Walsh's temple. Walsh staggered, giving Harland precious seconds to retrieve his weapon. As Walsh charged again, knife raised, Harland fired twice. The shots echoed through the empty house. Walsh collapsed. Bleeding and exhausted, Harland handcuffed the unconscious man. The subsequent investigation revealed Walsh had been living periodically in the farmhouse's storm cellar, which contained evidence linking him to 7 disappearances across 3 counties. The silver sedan had been deliberately crashed to set a trap for Harland, whose patrol patterns Walsh had studied meticulously. Think about that for a moment. A man you once trusted, who once stood beside you, watching your every move, planning your demise. What psychological toll must that take? To this day, Sheriff Harland can't drive past abandoned rural properties without checking his rearview mirror. He no longer responds to calls alone, no matter how routine they seem. And every year, on the anniversary of that night, he visits the families of Walsh's victims, carrying the weight of not having stopped a predator who had once worn the same badge he did. The most terrifying part, he often reflects, isn't that he nearly died that night. It's how long Walsh had watched him, studied him, and planned. All while Harland remained completely unaware of the danger. And he wonders how many other threats might be out there, watching and waiting, just beyond the beam of his flashlight. Harland's ordeal, as chilling as it was, wasn't an isolated incident. In Red Pine County, Wisconsin, Sheriff Thomas Keller was about to discover that betrayal could reach even higher, striking at the very foundation of his department. For 17 years, the cold case of Miranda Collins, a 19-year-old college student who vanished without a trace, had haunted Red Pine County. Despite extensive searches, no leads. Until October 12, 2009. Sheriff Thomas Keller found an anonymous letter on his desk. Sheriff Keller, I know what happened to Miranda Collins. I saw everything. Check the old processing plant at the north end of Ridge Road. Storage room B behind the broken compressor. You won't find Miranda, but you'll find proof. The letter, signed a concerned citizen, immediately seized Keller's attention. The abandoned meat processing plant had been searched before, but yielded nothing. This time, behind a broken compressor in storage room B, they found it, a hidden cavity, and inside, a plastic bag containing Miranda Collins's driver's license, a silver bracelet, and a man's wristwatch inscribed to Robert with pride, Dad, 1997. The watch was quickly linked to Robert Tillman, a local mechanic, who had done work at the Collins home before Miranda disappeared. He was arrested, but claimed the evidence was planted. The obvious question hung heavy in the air: if Tillman was guilty, who wrote the letter? 1 week later, a second letter arrived. Good work, Sheriff. 1 found, 3 to go. Whitford Park, the old well. You have until Friday. 3 to go. The unthinkable. There were other victims besides Miranda Collins. At Whitford Park, hidden by decades of overgrowth, they found an old stone well. At the bottom, human remains. Eliza Watt, missing since 2001. A third letter, then a fourth. Each revealing a new, unidentified victim, in locations no one would have thought to look. The chilling revelation came with the fourth letter, last one, Sheriff. She's the one that started it all. Harrison Quarry, North Face, behind the fallen rocks. I've given you justice for 4 forgotten souls. Now you need to look at your own department. The monster wore a badge. This sent shockwaves through the investigation. Someone inside his department. Security cameras were installed, but somehow, the letters kept appearing on his desk. The break came from forensic analysis of soil samples from the crime scenes, microscopic particles of specialized boot polish used primarily by military and police. Only one officer had been with the department during all 4 disappearances: former Sheriff William Garrett, Keller's own mentor. The man who had encouraged him to run for sheriff. Garrett's rural property, a locked workshop. Inside, hair and fiber evidence. Most damning, a hidden floor safe filled with trophies, Miranda Collins's student ID, Carol Masterson's house key. William Garrett, 67 years old, was arrested. He showed no emotion. His motive, he reportedly said, this county needed a protector. Sometimes protection means removing threats. His victims were women who had filed police reports that Garrett had personally handled, then dismissed or buried. He saw them as troublemakers, self-appointing himself judge and executioner. But the mystery of the letters remained. Who was the anonymous tipster? 3 months after Garrett's arrest, a 5th and final letter arrived, this time at Keller's home address. Sheriff Keller, justice has been served. William Garrett took my daughter, Patricia, in 1997. I suspected him from the beginning. I spent years gathering evidence, following him, learning his secrets. I couldn't bring my daughter back, but I could ensure he paid for what he did to her and to the others. My work is finished. Margaret Donahue. Patricia's mother, Margaret, had died of cancer in 2007, 2 years before the first letter arrived. Journals found among her effects detailed her suspicions and investigation. Handwriting analysis confirmed the journals were hers, but the letters sent to Keller were written by someone else, containing information only Margaret could have known. Her sister admitted Margaret had entrusted a sealed package to someone to finish what I started. To this day, The letter writer's identity remains unknown. Could it have been an insider, or a friend carrying out a dying wish? What incredible dedication to justice does that take? For Sheriff Keller, the case permanently changed his approach to law enforcement. He implemented sweeping reforms, including mandatory reviews of all cases involving vulnerable individuals. He was re-elected 3 times, serving until 2021. The Red Pine County case stands as a chilling reminder that sometimes the greatest threats lurk behind the very badges meant to protect us. How do you rebuild trust when the guardian becomes the executioner? In the quiet town of Pinehurst, Idaho, Sheriff Mason Reed had long enjoyed a sense of peace. For 14 years, his job had been largely routine, a reflection of a community where doors were rarely locked. But in September 2018, that peace was shattered. A seasonal forest worker clearing brush near an old logging road discovered a crude grave, partially unearthed by heavy rainfall. Inside, the remains of a young woman, hands crossed over her chest, a small carved wooden pine tree figure placed between them. Jessica Landon, 23, missing from a neighboring county for 2 years. She'd broken down in Pinehurst, a helpful local offering her a ride to the mechanic. She never arrived. As Reed delved deeper, a chilling pattern emerged. 4 other young women had disappeared passing through the region over the past decade. 2 classified as runaways, 1 a probable drowning, 1 an open missing persons case. Cadaver dogs confirmed Reed's worst fears. 4 more graves, arranged in a rough semicircle around a massive old-growth pine tree. Each contained remains in similar states of decomposition, hands crossed, with the same wooden pine tree figure. Pinehurst was reeling. A serial killer had been operating undetected in their midst for years. An anonymous letter arrived at Reed's office. "Sheriff, you're looking in the wrong places. Ask about the Woodsman's Festival of 1987 and why it stopped. Some traditions never really die." The Woodsman's Festival, an annual town celebration, abruptly discontinued 31 years ago. Most younger residents had never heard of it. Older townsfolk were evasive. Finally, 83-year-old Elena Palmer, the former town librarian, agreed to speak in confidence. "The festival ended because of what happened to that girl," Palmer explained, her hands trembling. "Mary Ann Schaefer. She was just passing through, had car trouble like the others. During the festival, there was a tradition where a young woman would be chosen as the forest bride. Just symbolic, you understand. But that year, some of the men had been drinking heavily. They took the tradition too far. Took her into the forest as part of the ceremony. Something went wrong. They came back without her. The town's leaders, including the sheriff at that time, covered it up. Mary Ann was reported as having continued her journey. The festival was quietly cancelled. Everyone who was directly involved is dead now, Palmer told him, but there was a boy, about 13 then, who followed the men into the forest that night. He saw everything. Thomas Garrett. He still lives up on Ridge Road. Now in his 50s, he owned the largest lumber supply business in the county. A prominent citizen, a generous donor, a volunteer search and rescue coordinator intimately familiar with the forests where the bodies had been found. Reed began quietly investigating Garrett. Garrett lived alone in his family's original homestead, bordering national forest land less than 2 miles from the graves. Each of the 5 victims had last been seen on days when Garrett's lumber business was closed and his whereabouts unaccounted for. Reed put Garrett under surveillance. On the 4th night, Garrett was observed loading something heavy into his truck, then driving into the forest. The team followed, watching him proceed on foot, carrying a shovel. What they witnessed next would haunt Reed for years to come. In a small clearing surrounded by ancient pines, Garrett had prepared a grave. And he wasn't alone. Bound and unconscious beside the hole was a young woman, Amber Reynolds, a college student reported missing that morning. The task force moved in quickly. Garrett was arrested. At his property, a hidden room beneath his workshop contained damning evidence. Personal items belonging to each victim, journals detailing his actions, and dozens of the carved wooden pine trees in various stages of completion. The journals revealed a disturbing evolution. After witnessing Mary Ann Schaefer's death in 1987, Garrett had been both traumatized and fascinated. The town's successful cover-up taught him a powerful lesson about secrets and silence. As an adult, he began reenacting and perfecting a distorted version of the ritual he had witnessed, seeing himself as continuing a tradition that connected him to the forest and the town's hidden history. During interrogation, Garrett calmly described his actions as honoring the forest through proper bribes. He expressed surprise at being caught, admitting he believed some townsfolk had suspected him, but chosen to look the other way, just as they had with the original incident. Think about the implications of that confession. A town, through its silence, enabling a serial killer for decades. For Sheriff Reed, the case was a profound betrayal, not just by Garrett, but by the community and the office he served. The previous sheriff, his own mentor, had been complicit in covering up Mary Ann Schaefer's death, creating the conditions that allowed Garrett's pathology to develop and flourish. Garrett was convicted on 5 counts of first-degree murder. Reed chose to remain as sheriff, implementing comprehensive reforms, including a cold case review protocol and mandatory reporting of all suspicious incidents, regardless of who was involved. What happened here wasn't just about one disturbed individual, Reed told the town. It was about a culture of silence that valued comfort over truth. Protection of our own over justice for strangers. That changes now or I walk away. Pinehurst slowly began to heal, though the case left lasting scars. 4 years afterward, hikers reported finding small carved wooden pine trees along trails in the national forest. Tributes left anonymously for the victims. Reed would personally collect and remove each one, keeping his own silent vigil for those who had died because too many people had chosen not to see what was happening beneath the silent pines. Though Garrett's reign of terror had ended, Reed often found himself looking more closely at familiar faces, wondering what other secrets might be hiding behind the neighborly smiles of Pinehurst. The forest that had once seemed protected now felt watchful. A silent witness to both past crimes and the fragile promise of justice finally served. But not all threats wear a familiar face. Sometimes, the horror lurking in the shadows defies all logic, hinting at something far more ancient or deeply hidden. What if the very air you breathe, the ground beneath your feet, or the waters of a seemingly tranquil lake hold secrets so profound and terrifying they could drive a good man to madness or reveal a past that refuses to stay buried? Prepare to question everything you thought you knew about reality. From the familiar horrors of human betrayal, we now venture into cases that push the boundaries of conventional law enforcement, touching on inexplicable phenomena and even hidden agendas that whisper of vast, unseen conspiracies. These are the mysteries that hint at forces beyond human comprehension, where the protector faces a terror that defies all logic. Let's descend into the chilling unknown, starting in Clearwater County, Minnesota, on a brutally cold January night in 1997. Sheriff Dale Erickson, a veteran lawman with over 2 decades patrolling vast forests and frozen lakes, was nearing the end of his shift. At -28 degrees, With wind chill making it feel closer to -40, most residents were safely indoors. But as Erickson made his final loop along remote County Road 7, something about the old, abandoned Halverson property caught his eye. Lights flickering within the decrepit farmhouse. "Hold on," he radioed dispatch. "Seeing some lights at the Halverson place. Going to check it out. Probably just kids." It was the last routine transmission anyone would ever hear from Sheriff Dale Erickson. 20 minutes passed. Then 30. Dispatch tried to reach him. No reply. Deputy Lisa Marquez arrived at 12:17 a.m. to find Erickson's patrol vehicle parked near the house, engine still running, driver's door open. His flashlight lay in the snow nearby, still illuminated. Of the sheriff himself, there was no sign. Marquez immediately called for backup. Within the hour, every available officer converged on the scene. The house was searched, the outbuildings, the surrounding snow-covered land. Nothing. The only trace of Erickson, a single set of footprints leading from his vehicle toward the farmhouse, before suddenly stopping halfway there, as if he had simply vanished mid-stride. The snow beyond his tracks was pristine. No other footprints, no tire marks, no signs of a struggle. His service weapon remained holstered. The only unusual detail, his radio, found 20 feet from where his footprints ended, partially buried in snow. Days turned into weeks. The search expanded. But Sheriff Dale Erickson had simply disappeared without a trace. Then, 3 weeks after Erickson's disappearance, the case took a bizarre turn. Dispatch received a radio transmission on the department's frequency at precisely 11:42 p.m., the exact time of Erickson's last routine call. The voice was distorted, barely intelligible, but audio analysts later confirmed it contained what sounded like Erickson saying, "Not alone here, something in the," before dissolving into static. The transmission originated from the vicinity of the Halverson property, yet when officers rushed to the scene, they found it undisturbed. The radio recovered weeks earlier remained in evidence. Development breathed new life into the investigation. A teenage couple, trespassing at the Halverson property, discovered Erickson's badge partially embedded in the concrete floor of the house's root cellar, a small underground storage space. The concrete appeared freshly poured around the badge. Investigators excavated the entire cellar floor. What they found beneath the concrete raised more questions than answers. No body, but a natural cavity in the earth, an entrance to a small, undocumented cave system. It descended sharply, becoming too narrow for adult exploration. Specialized cave rescue teams were brought in. They discovered the passage connected to a larger underground network that extended for miles beneath the county, a network geologists confirmed shouldn't exist given the region's limestone-poor bedrock. Most disturbing was what the teams found approximately 300 feet into the system. Sheriff Erickson's service revolver, his department-issued flashlight, different from the one found in the snow, and a handheld digital recorder. The items were arranged in a neat triangle on a flat rock surface, as if deliberately placed. The recorder's battery had died, but technicians managed to extract the data. A single audio file, time-stamped 11:53 p.m. on the night of Erickson's disappearance, 11 minutes after his last radio contact. The recording began with heavy breathing and movement through confined spaces. Erickson's voice, unusually tense, narrated, following tunnel under Halverson Place. Heard sounds coming from root cellar. Floor was already open when I arrived. Never knew this was down here. After about 2 minutes, Erickson whispered, "Something's not right. Air feels wrong. Smells like copper and something else, like ozone after lightning." Another minute passed with just cautious footsteps and heavy breathing before Erickson spoke again, his voice urgent. "Jesus Christ. There's light ahead. Blue light. It's pulsing. And there's something moving around it. Several somethings. Not human. Not animal either. I'm going to try to." The recording captured a sudden rush of air, like a strong wind in a confined space, followed by a sound analysts have been unable to identify, described variously as a mechanical humming combined with something organic and like multiple voices speaking backwards simultaneously. Erickson's final words on the recording came through clearly despite his obvious terror. "They've seen me. God help me. They're coming this way. If anyone finds this, don't come down here. Seal it up. Whatever's down here has been here a long time, and it needs to stay buried." The recording ended with the sound of Erickson apparently running, followed by a scream that audio experts determined was cut short, not by the recorder being damaged or turned off, but by the sound itself ceasing unnaturally mid-vocalization. County authorities controversially sealed the cave system, pouring hundreds of gallons of concrete into the entrance. The official explanation cited structural instability, though internal documents later referred to unexplained biological contaminants. Strangest of all, 3 separate copies of the recording, along with the original, degraded into unrecoverable static within weeks. Sheriff Erickson was officially declared dead in 2004. But the most unsettling postscript came in 2015 when scientists recorded unexplained seismic anomalies centered exactly beneath the former Halverson property, rhythmic vibrations occurring precisely every 28 days that one researcher described as almost like something down there is breathing. County maps now mark the area as restricted access, environmental hazard. Locals call it Erickson's Hole, and even the most skeptical residents make a point of driving miles out of their way to avoid passing the property after dark. What was it that Sheriff Erickson truly encountered in those unknown depths? Was it a natural phenomenon, a secret government experiment gone awry, or something ancient and unknowable that humanity was never meant to disturb? The evidence, or lack thereof, only serves to amplify the mystery. Perhaps what's truly frightening isn't just what lies beneath the earth, but what echoes through time itself. In Summit County, Colorado, Sheriff Marcus Weldon knew the mountains held secrets. But he was about to discover they held ghosts. It began on a stormy night in June 2013, a power outage blanketing the county. Sheriff Weldon was out checking on residents when dispatch called, "Sheriff, you need to get to the old fire tower on Black Ridge Peak. Someone's broadcasting from up there." The dispatcher, Nancy Carter, explained they were picking up a distorted signal, a voice. Weldon hesitated. The abandoned fire tower, decommissioned in 2001, sat atop a 10,000-foot peak, accessible only by a treacherous road. Deadly in a storm. But Nancy's voice was tense. "The signal's getting stronger, and it sounds like someone calling for help." Weldon made the decision. He was going. The journey was a white-knuckle crawl through mud and falling branches. His radio crackled with static, but as he climbed, he was sure he could make out words forming beneath the noise. A man's voice, desperate and afraid. At the base of the tower, no vehicles, no sign of recent activity. The metal staircase groaned as he ascended. The observation cabin at the top was empty, save for an ancient chair, a desk, and an old radio transmitter, a model not used since the 1980s. Yet, its power light glowed green despite the county-wide outage. Its dials moved slightly, as if being adjusted by invisible hands. "This is Sheriff Marcus Weldon," he announced to the empty room. "Is anyone here?" The radio hissed to life. "Mayday, Mayday. This is Fire Watcher Davis Colton. Tower's been struck. Fire spreading through the forest below. Can anyone hear me? Over." Weldon stared. No fire. And Davis Colton? The name tugged at his memory. He checked his own radio. Only static. But the desk radio spoke again. "The fires surrounding the tower. I'm trapped. Temperatures rising. If anyone can hear this, send help to Blackridge Tower immediately." A cold realization washed over Weldon. Davis Colton, the last fire watcher assigned to this tower. He had died in 1976 when lightning struck the structure during a severe storm, igniting a forest fire that trapped him inside. His last transmissions had described his desperate situation. But that was 37 years ago. Weldon's hand trembled as he reached for the radio's power switch. Before he could touch it, the device emitted a high-pitched squeal. When it subsided, the voice had changed. It was addressing him directly. "Sheriff Weldon, finally someone hears me. I've been broadcasting for so long." The hair on Weldon's neck stood on end. "How do you know my name?" "I see everyone who comes up here," the voice replied. "But they never stay long enough to hear me. The frequency only aligns during storms. When conditions match the night I died." Weldon backed toward the door, his training warring with the impossibility of what was happening. "What do you want?" "Justice," the voice whispered, now seeming to come from all around rather than just the radio. It wasn't an accident. The fire wasn't from lightning. The windows began to fog, not with condensation, but with what appeared to be smoke. The temperature in the small room rose noticeably. "I was murdered," the voice continued. "They wanted the fire to destroy the evidence. Check the South Ridge slope. The old survey marker. Dig there." Suddenly, the radio sparked and went silent. The smoke dissipated. The temperature returned to normal. Turned to the department, shaken. Records confirmed Colton's death and the official cause, lightning. But the sealed recordings of his final moments had been lost during a department relocation. Against all logic, Weldon returned to Blackridge 3 days later with ground-penetrating radar. At the South Ridge survey marker, they discovered an anomaly 3 feet below the surface. Excavation revealed a metal box containing a journal and a damaged audio recorder, both belonging to Davis Colton. The journal's final entries detailed Colton's discovery of illegal logging operations in protected areas, operations apparently sanctioned by county officials at the time. The last entry mentioned gathering photographic evidence and a planned meeting with federal authorities. Forensic analysis of Colton's exhumed remains found evidence inconsistent with the original fire death determination, trace amounts of accelerant and skull fractures. The case was officially reopened but quickly stalled. All suspects were long deceased. But Sheriff Weldon never returned to the tower. He filed his report, detailing the radio phenomenon but omitting his direct conversation with Colton's voice, citing just an anonymous tip. To this day, unexplained radio interference continues to affect emergency frequencies in Summit County during severe thunderstorms, particularly near Blackridge Peak. Maintenance crews repeatedly report finding the long obsolete radio transmitter in the tower, despite multiple removals. Each time, it sits on the desk, dusty and unpowered, yet somehow untouched by decades of exposure. Weldon retired in 2019, but locals say he still monitors an old emergency band radio during storms, sometimes until dawn, listening carefully through the static for voices from the forgotten frequency. Could it be a residual haunting, a desperate cry for justice echoing through the airwaves? Or is there something else, something we can't yet comprehend, manipulating the very fabric of reality to reveal hidden truths? The mysteries deepen when the very ground you stand on holds secrets. In Lakewood County, Oregon, Sheriff Dwayne Fletcher was a methodical investigator, known for his calm demeanor. But in March 2011, he faced his most perplexing case. It began with an apparent accident. Martin Walsh, an electrical engineer and weekend resident at Echo Lake, was found dead in his workshop, electrocuted while working on a custom radio setup. A straightforward accident, until Deputy Sarah Chen discovered Walsh's journal. "It's happening again," the final entry read, dated the day before Walsh's death. "Third night in a row. Voice coming through even when the equipment is unplugged. Same message. 40 years buried isn't enough. I'm going to try a different frequency range tonight. Whatever's out there wants to be heard." The journal detailed Walsh's 3-month experiment with ambient frequency detection, attempting to record naturally occurring radio waves around Echo Lake. He claimed fragments grew more coherent, eventually forming a single, elderly male voice speaking directly to him. Fletcher might have dismissed this as an eccentric hobbyist's imaginings, had it not been for two critical details. First, the medical examiner's report indicated inconsistencies with accidental electrocution. Burns suggested Walsh had been restrained before the current was applied. Second, Walsh's equipment showed signs of tampering. This was now a homicide investigation. A background check on Walsh revealed nothing, but a canvass of neighbors yielded an unexpected connection. 82-year-old Helen Maddox mentioned Walsh had visited her, asking about an incident with a radio tower. She told Fletcher about a USGS radio tower built on the north shore of Echo Lake in 1971, abandoned under mysterious circumstances after only 3 months. "The government men packed up overnight," she said, "left most of their equipment behind. There were rumors about what they heard through that tower. Nobody local would go near it afterward." Fletcher's research confirmed the USGS project, officially to study subsurface electromagnetic anomalies, was abruptly terminated with minimal documentation. Most curious was a classified addendum he couldn't access. The investigation took a dramatic turn when Fletcher obtained Walsh's audio files. Most were static, but the final recordings captured what Fletcher described as a voice unlike any I've heard. Distorted but clearly human. Repeating the same phrase, 40 years buried isn't enough. Audio specialists confirmed the recordings were genuine. The phrase 40 years buried caught Fletcher's attention. Counting back from 2011 led to 1971, the same year the USGS station was abandoned. Fletcher began searching for any incidents around Echo Lake from that period. County archives revealed a series of disappearances in early 1971, 3 men who vanished in separate incidents within a mile of the lake. Unsolved cases. The lead investigator, Deputy Leonard Harris, had resigned shortly afterward, citing health concerns. His widow revealed he'd had night terrors and paranoia, screaming about voices coming from the water. He'd made her promise never to go near Echo Lake. Something unnatural there, he'd said. Something that used the water to amplify itself. A disturbing picture emerged. 4 decades earlier, 3 men vanished near a lake where a government research station was suddenly abandoned. Now, a man investigating strange radio phenomena in the same location was dead. Fletcher's next step: geographic analysis. Walshy's cabin was built on the exact site of the 1971 USGS tower. More significantly, Walshy's workshop sat directly above a natural underground cavity, a cave system partially filled with water, connected to Echo Lake through subterranean channels. Hydrogeologists confirmed such a cavity could act as a natural amplifier for certain frequencies generated by moving water. The lake, they said, was like its diaphragm. This explained the phenomena, but not the homicide. The breakthrough came from an impression on Walshy's journal, an address belonging to James Carlson, a retired Forest Service employee who had been part of the team that demolished the abandoned radio tower in 1982. Carlson, now 76, eventually confessed. The demolition team had discovered human remains concealed within the tower's concrete foundation. There were 3 of them, Carlson confessed. Adult males. The foundation had been poured around them. They were just embedded there. They were told by their supervisor to ignore it, rebury everything, national security. Carlson provided photographs, skeletal remains, signs of struggling visible in the hardened concrete. The 3 missing men from 1971. But Walshy's death. That final piece came when Fletcher re-interviewed Walshy's colleagues from Portland. Walsh had been working on technology to improve underground communication, a system that could transmit voice data through solid rock using extremely low frequencies. His prototype was missing from the crime scene. The investigation ultimately led to Dr. Stephen Merritt, a geophysicist from the original 1971 USGS team, still working for the government. Confronted with the evidence, Merritt broke down. The 1971 mission, he confessed, was a classified project to develop submarine communication detection. The 3 men who disappeared had stumbled upon it. It was a different time, Merritt claimed. We had orders to protect the project at all costs. Things escalated. The project was terminated when their equipment wasn't just receiving signals, but amplifying and distorting them through Echo Lake's geology. They began picking up what Merritt described as voices that shouldn't have been there, which he attributed to stress, but which terrified the team enough to abandon the site. When Walsh began experimenting with similar technology 4 decades later, his recordings eventually reached frequencies that, according to Merritt, stirred something that should have stayed quiet. Whether Merritt truly believed some supernatural phenomenon was at work, or whether he was simply afraid of his past crimes being exposed, remained unclear. Either way, he tracked Walsh and eliminated him. Merritt was arrested, charged with Walshy's murder, and sentenced to life imprisonment. The remains of the 3 men were finally recovered and identified, bringing closure to families who had wondered for over 40 years. Scientific analysis confirmed Echo Lake's unusual acoustic properties, amplifying and distorting sounds in ways that might seem supernatural. Yet, Fletcher would later admit he was never entirely comfortable with the resolution. Walshy's final recordings remained unexplained by mere acoustics, particularly the clarity with which the voice had seemed to address both Walsh and, through him, the authorities. Could it be that what happened at Echo Lake wasn't just human crime amplified by geology, but a deeply buried secret that literal voices from the grave refused to let lie? What chilling truths are buried beneath the surface of our world, waiting for the right frequency to call out? From the spectral and conspiratorial, we now descend into the twisted logic of the human mind itself. What happens when obsession with patterns or a profound delusion turns a seemingly ordinary individual into a meticulous, chilling killer? Some killers leave behind clues, others, a chilling art. But what if the motive behind horrific murders isn't hate or greed, but a terrifying devotion to a twisted ideal, or an obsession with patterns only visible from above? Uncover the minds behind the most bizarre and meticulous crimes. Our journey into the darkest corners of the human psyche begins in the arid expanse of Sagebrush County, New Mexico, where Sheriff Elena Vasquez, a level-headed law enforcement veteran, faced a case that defied conventional understanding. In August 2016, a frantic hiker stumbled upon a macabre discovery in the dried riverbed of the Pedra Ayoyo. Human remains, meticulously arranged in a perfect circle, the skull placed precisely in the center, gazing skyward. This wasn't a random act of nature or animal scavenging. It was deliberate, almost ritualistic. Initial forensic analysis revealed the victim had died years earlier from a single, execution-style gunshot wound to the back of the head, and disturbingly, their hands had been removed post-mortem. 2 weeks later, a second set of remains, older but arranged identically, surfaced 8 miles downstream. A chilling pattern had emerged, hinting at a serial killer operating with a twisted, hidden agenda. The county reeled, and national media descended, bringing immense pressure to Sheriff Vasquez and her small department. The task force, now calling the perpetrator the Ayoyo Circle Killer, seemed at a dead end until a retired geologist provided a crucial, utterly bizarre insight. He pointed out that both bodies were found in areas where the Ayoyo widened into shallow pools during the rainy season. From an aerial perspective, when these pools filled with water, their shapes formed near-perfect circles. The killer wasn't asterisk creating asterisk the circles. They were asterisk matching asterisk patterns already present in the landscape, patterns only visible from above, or during the brief, intense flash floods. Asterisk asterisk think about that for a moment asterisk asterisk a murderer whose motive is literally tied to the very topography of the land. How could such a profound, yet completely invisible, obsession drive someone to commit such horrific acts? This revelation sent Vasquez to satellite imagery, identifying 5 more potential circular formations. One yielded a third victim, whose DNA finally provided a link to Daniel Covington, a geology graduate student who had vanished years prior while researching the Ayoyo's unique formations. Covington's notes mentioned an unusual local, a former surveyor named Leonard Merrick, who had shown an intense interest in his aerial photography. The final piece of the puzzle clicked for Sheriff Vasquez during a sleepless night. All victims were discovered asterisk after asterisk heavy rainfall, when the circular pools would briefly fill, and the bodies were positioned so that as the waters receded, the skull, at the center, would be the last element to emerge, creating a fleeting perfect circle of water around it from above. Armed with this terrifying realization, a search of Merrick's compound uncovered thousands of aerial photographs, some disturbingly depicting the circular pools with human heads at their centers, taken from a modified drone. The most damning evidence, the preserved, missing hands of all 3 victims, meticulously arranged and photographed in a hidden room. Merrick's confession was a descent into pure delusion. He believed the circular formations spoke to him, demanding completions through human sacrifice. He saw the victims as chosen by the landscape, their hands as tools of measurement belonging to the land itself. Merrick was convicted, a chilling testament to how a deeply disturbed individual, operating under a twisted personal philosophy, could remain undetected for decades. Sheriff Vasquez admits she now sees the landscape differently, always looking for patterns, things hidden in plain sight that might reveal darkness beneath. Asterisk asterisk it makes you wonder, doesn't it? How many other individuals might walk among us, living in a reality so utterly different, so profoundly twisted, that murder becomes an act of twisted devotion, asterisk asterisk. From the meticulous madness of a surveyor obsessed with earth patterns, we now delve into another terrifying landscape of the human psyche, where obsession with a twisted ideal led to a methodical, hidden horror. In Sparrow County, Ohio, Sheriff Drew Callahan, a no-nonsense pragmatist, was thrust into the most perplexing case of his career in March 2019. Land surveyors in an abandoned limestone quarry unearthed not one, but 3 human bodies, all adult males, brutally murdered and chillingly encased in hardened concrete. The victims had been bound, and evidence suggested they were still alive when the concrete was poured around them, their desperate struggles leaving telltale distortions. This wasn't just murder, it was an act of horrifying, calculated cruelty. The victims were unknown, no missing person reports matched, and the case seemed destined to go cold until an anonymous, handwritten letter arrived at Callahan's office. The men in the quarry were not the first, and they weren't the last. There are 7 more sites around the county. I know because I helped him. The letter promised more victims and locations, demanding Callahan come alone to an old bridge. Though wary of a hoax, Callahan took the lead seriously, finding a hidden container with a hand-drawn map. 17 in total, the note stated. Check the location nearest the water tower first. When you find them, I'll know I can trust you and I'll explain everything. I'm sorry I helped him. I was young and afraid. Imagine the terror of receiving a map that details 17 more hidden graves, a testament to a long dormant reign of terror. Callahan's team excavated the first site, finding 2 female victims, also encased in concrete. Over the next month, the map proved horrifyingly accurate, leading to the discovery of 16 more victims, 9 men and 7 women, bringing the total to 19. All bore signs of torture, all had been encased in concrete, and all the killings had occurred between 1998 and 2005. The sheer scale was unimaginable for such a quiet county. Then came the text message, "You found them all now. I'm ready to talk." Callahan, against the advice of state investigators, met the anonymous tipster alone. Elaine Morgan, a thin, nervous woman in her late 30s, emerged from the darkness. She admitted to being an accomplice, helping him move and bury the bodies, but swore she never killed anyone. The he in question was Robert Egan, a concrete contractor, who had been Elaine's neighbor and later partner. According to her chilling confession, Egan methodically abducted and murdered his victims over a 7-year period, targeting individuals he believed wouldn't be missed: drifters, hitchhikers, those on society's margins. He called it cleansing, removing human waste from the world. And the most disturbing detail? The killings didn't stop because Egan feared capture or had a change of heart. They stopped in 2005 because Robert Egan died of a massive heart attack. Elaine had lived for 14 years with the crushing weight of her secret, inheriting his property, which included a makeshift torture chamber in the storm cellar. She finally came forward after a terminal cancer diagnosis. "I can't die with this secret anymore." Elaine Morgan's confession, along with Egan's meticulously detailed journal found among his effects, finally brought justice for 19 forgotten souls. Callahan later reflected that these victims vanished from the world without raising alarms because too many of them existed on the periphery of our attention. Their invisibility in life facilitated their disappearance and death. It's a stark reminder of how easily evil can hide in plain sight when we fail to truly see those around us. Even when the perpetrators are caught and the bodies are found, some cases cast a long shadow. For these sheriffs, the true horror wasn't just in the discovery, but in the haunting aftermath that forever changed their lives and their communities. What happens after the headlines fade, after the arrests are made, and the initial shock wears off? For some sheriffs, the battle doesn't end. Instead, it transforms into a lifelong struggle against lingering fear, paranoia, and the chilling realization that some questions are never truly answered. We've seen the depths of human depravity and the fringes of the unexplained, but for the men and women who stand on the front lines, these cases don't just close with a file stamp. They embed themselves deep within the psyche, becoming a part of who they are, forever altering their perception of reality and safety. Consider Sheriff Lucas Merritt, whose career was defined by a terrifying encounter with a clandestine group known only as the Pioneers in Arizona's Hidden Valley. This group, conducting horrific human experiments, seemed to disappear into the vast, arid landscape as quickly as they appeared after their lab was discovered and victims rescued. For Merritt, that case never truly ended. Imagine the gnawing fear of knowing that those who sought to weaponize secrets could still be out there, watching. Years after the incident, Merritt, a man who had dedicated his life to protecting his community, began receiving anonymous postcards. Blank, save for a simple drawing of a pioneer wagon. A chilling, silent message: "We know where you are. We are still watching." The once methodical lawman became consumed by a quiet paranoia. He installed extensive security around his home, moved twice, and kept a loaded shotgun by his bed. Every unexplained shadow, every distant vehicle, every anonymous glance became a potential threat. He entrusted journalists and fellow officers with a comprehensive file on the Pioneers, with instructions to release it if anything happened to him. How would you live, knowing that a hidden, powerful enemy might be observing your every move, a phantom threat that law enforcement, even the FBI, could not apprehend? What toll would that take on your trust, not just in others, but in the very fabric of justice itself? Merritt's life became a perpetual vigil, a testament to the chilling truth that some conspiracies run deeper than any badge can penetrate, leaving their victims, even those who escape with their lives, forever haunted by the unseen hand of a powerful, elusive adversary. His retirement was not a peaceful retreat, but a strategic withdrawal, a continuation of the battle on his own terms, forever looking over his shoulder. Then there's the tragic, unsettling saga of Sheriff Ethan Blackwood from Crawford County, Kentucky, and the phenomenon known as the Crawford Watchman. What began as bizarre sightings of an unnaturally tall, silent figure watching homes from the tree line escalated into a terrifying pattern of elderly residents dying of apparent natural causes, always after a sighting, always leaving behind a circular arrangement of personal items. Blackwood, initially skeptical, became increasingly convinced that something profoundly unnatural was at play. His investigation, initially grounded in logic and procedure, began to spiral into an intense, almost obsessive delve into local history, ancient Shawnee burial practices, and a theory that suggested the Watchman was a territorial sentinel, preying on those whose life energy sustained it. He spoke of the figure reclaiming its watchers. Dr. Chen, the criminal psychologist brought in to assess the situation, attributed it to mass psychogenic illness, but the physical evidence, the undisturbed circular clearings, and the unsettling consistency of the accounts defied simple explanation. Imagine being a sheriff, tasked with protecting your community, only to find yourself confronting a phenomenon that shatters your understanding of reality, draining your rational mind and replacing it with a consuming paranoia. Blackwood's descent into obsession culminated in his own terrifying encounter, where the Watchman seemed to track him specifically, not just his home. Soon after, he vanished without a trace, leaving behind a room plastered with maps and theories, his service weapon and badge abandoned. His county-issued flashlight was found in a perfectly cleared circular patch deep in the forest, illuminating a circle of river stones. For the people of Crawford County, the official explanation, a psychological break leading to exposure in the wilderness, rings hollow. Occasional sightings persist, whispering reminders that some horrors cannot be simply dismissed or confined to a mental health diagnosis. How do you close a case when the very nature of the threat defies capture or understanding? How do you live in a community where the ground itself might be guarding ancient, malevolent secrets, where a shadow that watches from the forest edge can drive a good man to madness and then claim him entirely? The Watchman phenomenon left an indelible mark on Crawford County, a spectral scar on the landscape and the collective psyche. Even now, deputies silently follow Blackwood's unusual protocol, investigating every unnatural clearing in the woods, a silent homage to the sheriff who became consumed by a truth too terrifying to comprehend, a truth that ultimately claimed him. These stories serve as stark reminders that the darkest corners of humanity and the unknown can emerge in the most unexpected places. But what deeper truths do they reveal about our world and ourselves? After journeying through these chilling accounts, one question remains. Are these isolated incidents, or merely glimpses into a deeper, unsettling reality hidden beneath the veneer of normalcy? We've delved into cases where the badge was betrayed, where trusted figures became the very monsters they were sworn to protect against. We've journeyed into the inexplicable, where ancient secrets and unseen forces twisted reality, and where the human psyche, driven by bizarre obsessions, painted horrific patterns across the landscape. And finally, we witnessed the enduring trauma, the haunting aftermath that forever reshaped the lives of those who stared into the abyss and saw it stare back. What do these untold stories of sheriffs like Robert Harland, Thomas Keller, Elena Vasquez, Dwayne Fletcher, Lucas Merritt, Ethan Blackwood, Mason Reed, and Drew Callahan truly tell us about the world we live in? Perhaps the most profound truth revealed is the fragility of peace, especially in the quiet, isolated communities that often feel furthest removed from the world's chaos. These places, where neighbors are known and trust is built over generations, can become breeding grounds for the unimaginable, their very isolation providing perfect cover for the darkest human intentions or the most inexplicable phenomena. How quickly can a seemingly tranquil town descend into terror when the threat comes from within, or from beyond our understanding? It forces us to confront the hidden nature of evil. It rarely announces itself with fanfare. Instead, it lurks in plain sight, behind familiar smiles, beneath abandoned buildings, or hidden within the very land itself. It's the former deputy, the respected contractor, the quiet surveyor, or the decades-old conspiracy that no one dared to question. And sometimes, it's a force so alien, so utterly outside our comprehension, that its existence shakes the very foundations of what we believe to be real. This constant, unseen threat highlights the profound, often unacknowledged sacrifices made by those who wear the badge. Sheriffs and deputies, already hardened by the daily grind of their dangerous profession, often bear the psychological scars of cases that defy logic, cases that challenge their trust in humanity, or cases that simply refuse to offer a neat resolution. From Sheriff Harlan's lingering paranoia after confronting his stalker, to Sheriff Merritt's lifelong vigil against the pioneers, and Sheriff Blackwood's tragic descent into obsession, these individuals carry the weight of unspeakable knowledge. They are the sentinels, standing between us and the things that go bump in the night, or worse, in broad daylight. Their vigilance is an unending duty, a silent promise to protect communities that often remain blissfully unaware of the true horrors they face. And in a world increasingly filled with information, These stories remind us that some truths are not meant to be easily understood. They are the enduring mysteries, the chilling possibilities that exist just beyond the beam of our flashlight, waiting in the shadows. They are the echo of voices from a forgotten frequency, the rhythm of something breathing beneath sealed earth, or the patterns of madness etched into the very landscape. For these brave sheriffs, and for us, the enduring question is not just who or what, but how do we live with the knowledge that such darkness exists? How do we balance safety with the unsettling reality that some mysteries are perhaps safer left unsolved? The courage of these individuals lies not just in their willingness to face down physical danger, but in their quiet resolve to continue serving, even when the job takes them to the very edge of sanity and leaves them forever changed. They remind us that the unseen threat is always there, demanding an eternal vigilance, a quiet strength, and a profound respect for the mysteries that still lie buried beneath the surface of our world. And perhaps, that is the most unsettling truth of all.
If you're still awake, thank you for braving the dark with us tonight on Midnight Whispers. If these stories stirred something in you, a chill, a memory, a shadow, don't forget to like this video, subscribe for more true horrors, and ring the bell so you never miss a whisper from the night. Sleep tight, if you can.